Arab executive followed African janitor, taking food from trash. What he discovered was heartbreaking. He was one of the wealthiest men in Dubai. She was the quiet, unseen janitor who worked nights in his company's glass tower. But one evening, he noticed something unusual. She was slipping out the back door, glancing over her shoulder and digging into the trash bins behind the building. He followed her, and what he discovered changed his life forever. This isn't just a story about wealth. It's about compassion, about human dignity, and a bond that defied every social barrier. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. We bring you powerful, true-to-life stories like this one that will touch your heart and make you see the world differently. It was well past midnight when Khalil Al-Masri, CEO of one of the Middle East's largest logistics firms, stood by the tinted windows of his 42nd floor office. The skyline of Dubai glittered beneath him, but his eyes weren't on the view. He was exhausted, disillusioned, and strangely hollow, a feeling that wealth couldn't touch. He had stayed late again, not because of meetings or deadlines, but because home didn't feel like home anymore. His marriage had ended in silence 2 years ago. His son barely spoke to him, and every room in his penthouse echoed with absence. And that night, through the corner of his eye, he saw something unusual on the building's CCTV monitor. A woman, dressed in a blue janitor's uniform, was slipping out through the loading dock exit. It was a restricted area, monitored mostly for theft or smuggling. Khalil rarely checked it himself, but something about her posture caught his attention. She was small, maybe mid-30s, African by her features and skin tone. Her movements were careful, as if she didn't want to be seen. She looked over her shoulder twice before disappearing into the shadows behind the parking structure. Curious, Khalil tapped into the live feed from the rear lot cameras. There she was again. He watched her approach the industrial dumpster. His eyes narrowed. She was digging through it. Not quickly, like a thief would. Gently, selectively, as if she was looking for something specific. She pulled out a plastic-wrapped container, food discarded from the corporate cafeteria. Without hesitation, she tucked it into her bag and pulled out another. Khalil sat there, frozen. This woman, this janitor, was scavenging for meals from his trash bins. The image didn't sit right with him. He was a man raised on privilege, but his grandfather had taught him the values of honor and responsibility. And here was a woman working in his building, under his contracts, resorting to this. The next night, he waited. When she exited again, Khalil didn't watch from the cameras. He followed her in person. He kept his distance, pulling the collar of his blazer up as he stepped into the alleyway behind the building. It was quieter than usual. The hum of the city was muffled here, drowned by the sound of ventilation units and the clatter of faraway traffic. She was there, same spot, kneeling. Her fingers moved with quiet urgency. She paused to wipe a piece of rice off the lid of a takeout box before placing it carefully into her worn-out bag. But this time, something else happened. From behind a rusted shipping container, a small figure emerged. A child. A girl, no older than 7, barefoot, with large, wide eyes and hair in tight, dusty curls. The janitor turned to the girl, smiled softly, and pulled a juice box from the bag. She handed it to her, then pulled out a sandwich, carefully torn in half. Khalil's breath caught in his throat. The janitor wasn't feeding herself. She was feeding her daughter. Suddenly, the story shifted in his mind. This wasn't just about poverty. It was about survival, dignity, love. And for a man who had built skyscrapers and bought entire companies overnight, he realized in that alleyway he knew nothing about the people who cleaned his floors. He stepped back before she saw him, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Who was she? How long had she been doing this? And why had no one, not HR, not building security, not he himself, ever noticed? As he returned to the elevator, Khalil couldn't shake the image of the little girl's face. It followed him like a ghost into the silent elevator, past the marble lobby, all the way back to his black luxury SUV. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, not in anger, in shame. He was one of the richest men in Dubai, and in his own empire. A mother and daughter were eating out of the trash. The next morning, Khalil didn't go straight to his office. Instead, he asked for the janitorial schedule, something he had never looked at before, something his assistant always handled. It took nearly an hour of quiet maneuvering and discreet questions to get the information he wanted without drawing attention. Her name was Amina Doumbia, originally from Mali. Worked for a third-party cleaning service contracted by the building. No formal complaints, no raises either. She had been assigned the night shift for almost a year. No one really knew much about her, just another quiet face in the dark corridors after hours. That night, Khalil stayed again, but this time not to wait for her to sneak out. He waited for her to arrive. She entered through the side door around 7:30 p.m., pushing a mop bucket, her eyes fixed to the floor. There was something in her posture that struck him again, something humble, but not broken. There was pride in her movements, even if her uniform was too large and her shoes too worn. Khalil stepped out of the elevator and stood in the hallway, blocking her path slightly. "Excuse me," he said gently. She stopped, startled. Her hands clenched the mop handle tighter. "Yes, sir." Her voice was soft but steady. "You're Amina, aren't you?" She looked at him carefully. "Yes. I'm Khalil. I own this building." Amina stiffened, clearly nervous. "I know who you are, sir." He gave a slight nod. "I'd like to talk. Not as CEO to employee, just one person to another." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the security camera above. "Am I in trouble?" "No, not at all. Please, just 5 minutes." He motioned toward the break room, which was empty at this hour. She followed him in silence. The sound of her rubber-soled shoes against the tile echoed in the silence. Inside, Khalil poured 2 cups of tea from the small machine near the fridge. He handed her one and sat across from her. "I saw you last night," he said gently. Her eyes widened. "I followed you," he added. "I know you went to the dumpsters. I know about the little girl." She said nothing. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't speak. She didn't plead or explain. She simply lowered her head, as if bracing for shame or punishment. "I don't want to fire you," he said. "I want to understand." Silence hung between them. Then, finally, she looked up. "I come from Bamako," she said slowly. "My husband died 4 years ago. I left to find work, to send money back home. But when I arrived here, there was no job waiting like they promised. Only debt." Khalil nodded, saying nothing. "I found work as a cleaner, night shifts. My daughter, her name is Layla. I couldn't leave her behind. She's all I have." "Where do you live?" "In Al-Quoz. 1 room, shared bathroom. It's not much, but it's safe. Most nights." Khalil felt his throat tighten. Al-Quoz was a warehouse district, hot, loud, and filled with makeshift labor housing. Not a place for a child. "And the food?" Amina's eyes welled up. "I send most of my pay to Mali. My mother is sick. The rest isn't enough. Sometimes the cafeteria throws away full trays. I never steal, only what they throw out." She said it with pride, as if even her hunger followed a moral code. "I understand," Khalil said quietly. "No, you don't," Amina replied, her voice sharper now. "You live in the clouds. You don't see us. You don't hear our feet on the stairs. You don't know what it's like to count rice grains for a child. You're kind now, but tomorrow maybe you'll forget." Her words stung more than she realized, because they were true. Khalil looked down at his untouched tea. Then he met her gaze. "I want to help." She blinked, confused. "Not out of guilt," he added, "but because I should have seen you sooner. I should have looked. I don't want to be the kind of man who steps over people like you and sleeps well at night." Amina said nothing. Her silence was not agreement. It was disbelief. "I want to help Layla go to school," he said. "I want to offer you a full-time position, better hours, a home, a safe one." Now her eyes did flood with tears, but she wiped them quickly, as if ashamed to let him see her crack. And then, very softly, she whispered, "Why me?" Khalil didn't hesitate. "Because last night you taught me what real dignity looks like." The next morning, Khalil cancelled his meetings. His staff was shocked. He hadn't taken a full day off in years. not even when his company hit the Forbes Top 100 list. But this day was different. Something had shifted inside him, and ignoring it felt impossible now. Instead of heading to his office, he drove straight to Alquoz. The sun was already beating down on the tin rooftops. The heat clung to the air like a weight. The streets buzzed with noise, men shouting directions in half a dozen languages, rusty trucks idling, barefoot children chasing a deflated soccer ball across gravel and dust. Khalil parked at the corner and stepped out, immediately drawing stares. No one in a tailored suit came here unless they were lost or trying to hide something, but he kept walking. Amina had described her building. Block C, 3rd floor, end unit, with peeling green paint on the door. He found it easily. It looked worse in daylight. The window was cracked and patched with cardboard. There was no air conditioning unit, just a small fan clinging to the windowsill like it might fall off at any moment. He knocked once. Then again. The door creaked open. Layla stood there barefoot, her eyes wide and cautious. She clutched a plastic doll missing one arm. Amina appeared behind her, breathless. "You came?" "I said I would." She opened the door fully. The room behind her was barely big enough for a mattress and a small table. A curtain hung between the bed and a tiny kitchenette. The floor was clean, but the air was stifling, and the noise from outside never stopped. Layla stared up at him silently. Khalil crouched to her level. "Hi," he said gently. She looked at her mother, then back at him. "Are you the man from the building?" Her voice was quiet, cautious. "Yes," he smiled. "But today, I'm just a friend." Layla nodded once, then retreated behind her mother's legs. "I came to bring you both somewhere," Khalil said, rising. "Somewhere safe. If you'll trust me." Amina looked like she might cry again, but this time she didn't hide it. "I don't have anything to pack," she whispered. "You don't need anything. Just come." The apartment was on the edge of Dubai Marina, a temporary corporate unit Khalil kept for international partners. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, sea view. For most, it was a dream. For Amina, it felt like walking into another planet. Layla ran to the window, laughing. "Mama, look, water!" Amina didn't move at first. She stood in the doorway like she didn't belong, afraid the floor might vanish beneath her feet if she stepped in too far. "You're safe here," Khalil said gently. "This is yours for as long as you need." "But the rent—" "There is none," he interrupted. "You're not a tenant. You're under my protection now." She turned toward him slowly. "No one's ever said that to me before." Khalil felt something twist inside his chest. Then they've all been blind. He spent the rest of the day helping them settle in. He had groceries delivered. He brought in a woman from HR to help Amina sign a new contract. Full-time housekeeping staff at headquarters, daytime hours, childcare support included. Layla would start school the following week. Khalil had already arranged everything, but as the sun began to set and the skyline shimmered in gold light, Amina sat beside him on the small balcony. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. "I know." "So why?" He looked at her. Really looked. "I've spent my life building towers," he said, "but I never once built a bridge. You reminded me that people matter more than profits. You reminded me who I used to be, before the suits, before the boardrooms." Amina looked away, quiet for a long moment. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "Just live," Khalil said. "Live and never look through a trash bin again." And for the first time since he had met her, Amina smiled, not politely, not carefully, but fully. And it lit something inside him he hadn't felt in years. For a few weeks, everything felt almost too perfect. Amina arrived at work each morning with clean clothes and a quiet glow in her face. Her posture had changed, still modest, but no longer burdened. She moved through the marble hallways with grace, unnoticed by most, but unmistakably changed to those who had known her before. And Khalil, though he returned to the rhythm of board meetings and conference calls, found himself checking the school report Layla's teacher emailed weekly. He found himself pausing outside the staff lounge, hoping to catch a glimpse of Amina's laughter drifting through the hall. Something about their world, hers and his, had begun to overlap in ways he hadn't expected, or maybe hadn't dared to hope for. But the corporate world wasn't built on kindness. Whispers started quietly. First, it was the receptionist who saw Khalil walking with Amina outside the building one evening. Then it was a middle manager who noticed the new HR contract she had signed. Full benefits, flexible hours, a private driver picking her up in the morning. By the end of the week, the rumors had grown teeth. "She must be his mistress," someone said. "I heard she's blackmailing him," another claimed. "She's just a janitor. Why else would a billionaire care?" Khalil heard it all. He pretended not to care, but it burned under his skin. Not because he was embarrassed, but because the cruelty in their tone reminded him of something far uglier than gossip. It reminded him of the way the world strips dignity from those who fight hardest to keep it. One afternoon, as he stepped into the elevator, he overheard two executives talking inside. "Maybe she has something on him," one chuckled. "God knows what a man like Khalil hides." "Or maybe he just likes his charity cases to be pretty," the other smirked. They fell silent the second he entered. He didn't speak, but the silence he carried with him said everything. Amina noticed it too. The way people looked at her differently, the way voices hushed when she entered a room, the way some of the other cleaning staff had started to avoid her, unsure whether her presence meant privilege or punishment. She didn't say anything to Khalil, but he saw it in her eyes. The return of that old guarded look, like she was shrinking herself again to fit the space she'd been told she belonged in. One evening, as they sat on the same balcony overlooking the marina, she finally spoke. "They're talking about us." He didn't pretend not to understand. "I know," he said. "You shouldn't have to defend me." "I'm not defending you," Khalil said softly. "I'm defending the truth. And the truth is, you deserve better than this world gives you credit for." She looked away, struggling. "You gave me a life I never dreamed of. But I don't want to be your weakness." "You're not," he replied firmly. "You're my reminder." Her eyes searched his. "Of what?" He hesitated, then answered, "Of who I still have a chance to be." Amina exhaled shakily. "They think I'm using you. They think I don't belong in your world." Khalil leaned forward, his voice low but unwavering. "Then let them think. But don't ever let them decide who you are." He paused. "And don't ever let them make you feel small again." She looked at him for a long time, and for the first time, Khalil saw something in her eyes that startled him. Not just gratitude, not just admiration, but trust. Real, whole, fragile trust. It terrified him, and it moved him deeper than anything had in years. Yet he also knew the storm was only beginning, because the higher you climb, the louder the world demands your fall, and someone, somewhere, was already sharpening a knife behind their smiles. Khalil had always believed that secrets, like oil, eventually rise to the surface, but he hadn't expected it to come this fast, or this deliberately. It was a Monday morning when his assistant, Lean, walked into his office with an envelope. No sender, no stamp, just his name written in neat, capital letters. Khalil opened it slowly. Inside were printed screenshots, a series of grainy photographs showing Amina entering the luxury apartment building, holding Layla's hand, stepping into his black SUV. In one, they were at the marina promenade, Amina laughing, Layla on his shoulders. Another showed the three of them outside a private school gate, and at the bottom, a single sentence in bold black type. "This is how you destroy a company, one woman at a time." Khalil felt the heat rise in his chest. Not from shame, from rage. Someone had gone out of their way to follow them. Someone had hired a private investigator, captured moments that were innocent, but made them look otherwise. Someone wanted to hurt him by targeting the person he dared to care about. He stood up, fists clenched. His first instinct was to go straight to the boardroom and confront them all. But who? The photos could have come from anyone. Lean hovered by the door, watching him closely. "Do you want me to shred it?" Khalil shook his head. "No, keep it." That night, he didn't go straight home. He drove to the apartment. Amina opened the door before he could knock. She'd seen his car pull in. Something in his face told her everything. "What happened?" she asked, already tense. He stepped inside, holding the envelope. She looked at the photos in silence. I should have known this would happen, she whispered, eyes scanning the images. I should have left when I had the chance. No, Khalil said. You shouldn't have to live in fear because someone else can't stand to see you rise. They're going to ruin you, she said. Your board, your reputation, your life. They can try. Amina shook her head. You don't get it. You're an Arab billionaire. I'm a black immigrant woman who cleans floors. In their eyes, I don't deserve your protection. I don't even deserve your attention. Khalil stepped closer. His voice was low, but every word landed like iron. Then let them look. Let them whisper. Let them burn the ground beneath us. But I will not abandon you. Layla peeked out from her room, sensing the tension. Khalil saw her, and for a moment the storm inside him calmed. She called me uncle today, he said softly. I think she finally feels safe. Amina smiled faintly through her tears. She is, for the first time in her life. But Amina was right. The photos were only the beginning. 3 days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Khalil walked into the glass conference room wearing his usual black suit, calm but unflinching. There were murmurs, cleared throats, shifting in chairs. It was the head of legal who finally spoke. We received a complaint about improper personal involvement with a member of the cleaning staff. Khalil raised an eyebrow. Improper. You're co-signing rent. You placed her daughter in a private school under your corporate fund, and you've adjusted her employment contract directly, outside of HR protocol. Khalil looked around the table. Half the men looked away. Is this about ethics? He asked. Or about race? A stunned silence. I didn't break a law, he continued. I helped someone who was living beneath our feet while we drank imported coffee and talked about profit margins. She's a liability, one of them said flatly. No, Khalil replied. She's the only human being in this company who reminded me what dignity looks like. He stood. If any of you think helping a mother and child is a threat to this business, then you're welcome to vote me out. But I won't apologize for being a man first, and a CEO second. And with that, he walked out. That night, he didn't go home. He went back to the apartment and found Amina on the balcony again, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the dark sea. He walked to her, quiet. They tried, he said simply. Amina turned toward him, her face unreadable. And? I let them know exactly who I am. She held his gaze. And who are you, Khalil? He exhaled. A man who finally has something worth losing. Khalil had survived market crashes, hostile takeovers, and betrayal in boardrooms filled with snakes wearing designer ties. But nothing had ever felt as exhausting as this quiet war against judgment. The kind that came not from facts, but from deeply rooted fears. The media had picked up the story within days. Arab billionaire under scrutiny for special treatment of African janitor. The article was careful. No slander, no legal violations stated. But the tone was poisonous. The kind designed to ignite comment sections and stir anonymous fury. Some tabloids printed the photos. Others invented their own storylines. She seduced him for security. He's grooming her for something political. She's his hidden wife. Khalil refused to respond. He refused to fuel it. But silence came at a cost. Amina had started staying indoors more, rarely leaving the apartment except to take Layla to school. Even there, other parents stared. One even pulled her child away from Layla's hand at the playground, as if her skin could contaminate privilege. It was a Tuesday when Amina finally broke. She stood in the living room, trembling, a letter clutched in her hand. "They want me to leave," she said, holding it out to him. It was from the school, vague but unmistakable. Layla's enrollment was being re-evaluated in light of recent public attention. Khalil read it, face hardening. "I'll speak to them." Amina shook her head. "No, you'll make it worse. I can pay them double. And it still won't matter. To them, we'll never be more than what we look like." He stepped forward. "Amina, this isn't your fault." She looked at him, eyes glassy but full of fire. "But it's our consequence." He understood, and it broke him in a way money never could fix. That night, Khalil called in a favor from a friend in London. Amina and Layla would have private schooling abroad, legal assistance, and a place to stay if she chose to leave the country, without the cameras, the whispers, the threats. He didn't want to offer it, but he couldn't be selfish now. When he told her the plan, her face went pale. "You want me to leave?" "No," he said quietly. "I want you to have the choice. I want you and Layla to be safe. I want you to breathe without looking over your shoulder." She looked down. "And what about you?" "I'll be fine." Amina smiled weakly. "No, you won't." They stood in silence for a long time. The city lights flickered outside like distant fires. "I can't promise you comfort," he said finally. "Not now, not ever. But I can promise I'll never look away from you, no matter what they say." Amina walked slowly toward him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You gave me a life, and now I have to choose between keeping it or keeping you." He said nothing. He knew there was no fair answer. Later that night, Layla climbed into Khalil's lap with her stuffed doll and asked, "Are we going away again?" Khalil held her close. "Only if you want to." "I want to stay," she said. "I like it when we have breakfast with Mama and you." Her innocence cut deeper than any rumor ever could. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dark, staring at the ocean. Somewhere across that sea, There was a version of this story where Amina disappeared quietly, respectfully, and the world went back to forgetting her. But he couldn't live in that version. He wouldn't. The next morning, Khalil called a press conference. He stood alone at the podium. No PR team, no lawyers. "I will not apologize for helping a woman survive. I will not be shamed for protecting a child from hunger. And I will not resign from a company I built with my own 2 hands because I chose dignity over indifference." He paused, looking straight into the cameras. "If you can't accept that kindness lives in my heart alongside power, then you never deserve to follow me in the first place." He ended it without taking questions. The room was stunned. The country? Divided. But for the first time in weeks, Khalil felt free. When he returned to the apartment that evening, Amina was waiting. Layla was asleep on the couch, one tiny hand still clutching his name badge like a treasure. Amina stepped toward him. "I saw the press conference," she said softly. He looked into her eyes. "Do you forgive me?" She touched his face. There was never anything to forgive. Amina didn't take the flight to London. Instead, she stayed. And when Khalil woke up the next morning, she was already in the kitchen, braiding Layla's hair and humming a song he didn't recognize. For the first time, the apartment didn't feel like a borrowed space. It felt like a home. That evening, she waited on the same balcony where so many silences had lived between them. When he joined her, she didn't look away. "I'm not running," she said. He nodded. "Then we build here." A pause, a quiet moment held between them. "Together?" she asked. He smiled gently. "Only if you say yes." And she did, with no grand gesture, no ceremony, just her hand reaching for his. And that was enough. The noise died down. The headlines shifted to newer scandals, brighter flames. People stopped whispering in elevators. Even the boardroom grew quiet again, not out of approval, but respect. Khalil didn't need to justify himself anymore. Amina started working part-time with the company's community foundation, creating programs for migrant mothers like her. She walked through the halls no longer invisible, but vital, heard, seen. Layla was accepted back into school. Her classmates no longer stared. They laughed with her now. She began drawing pictures of Uncle Khalil with stars around his head. At night, when the city went quiet, Khalil would lie awake with Amina beside him, listening to her breathe, thinking how strange it was to find everything he'd ever wanted in someone the world had tried so hard not to see. Years passed, not with fireworks, but with quiet, steady warmth. Layla called him Baba now. Amina called him my love. And Khalil? He had stopped trying to impress the world and started trying to become the man she believed he was. Not a billionaire, not a savior, just a man with open hands and an open heart. The towers still bore his name, but in the end, the legacy that mattered most was the one he built around a small kitchen table, with a woman who once fed her child from a dumpster and who now, every morning, fed him hope. If this story inspired you, remember, courage isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and brave enough to love what others overlook. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in second chances.